Hi everyone, I'm Megan and this is Beguiled by Books, a community of book lovers and word nerds. Today I'm sharing my May 2025 reading wrap up with 14 books. Let's get started. Before we get started, friendly reminder to use the link in the description or the pinned comment below to sign up for the upcoming course, The Growth Library, a book-based blueprint to wisdom and well-being. I'm looking forward to having you over there, so go sign up now and start getting your free early access bonus materials before enrollment rolls out. In May, I read 14 books. Now, that is a ton of books for most people, and it's a ton of books even for me in the month of May. I was shocked that I read it. Technically, I read 12 books because two were DNFs, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I'm really excited to share these books because I read so many and so quickly. It felt so great. May was a bit of a whirlwind. We started the month with my birthday and our anniversary and a trip out to Denver, Colorado for a wonderful concert at Red Rocks, yay Skrillex. And then we had a little bit of downtime before hosting our parents for a Memorial Day brunch. And it's been a fun and exciting month. We've got lots more travel coming up in the rest of the year, so should be fun to see how many books can be read. So, 14 books. Where do we start? Let's start with the first one. I read Oathbound by Tracy Dion, and that is the third book in the Legendborn cycle, and I love this storyline. I think there are going to be at least two more books, if I'm not mistaken, in this series. It just continues the saga of Bree Matthews and her newfound magic, her newfound entanglement with the ancient King Arthurian legend and how that has come to manifest in present day. It's such a fun and amazing and well-written series. I really like it. It is YA, so very good for the younger readers as well as grown-ups like me. It's super fun, and what I love about it is it takes place in Central North Carolina and the Southeast region, and so many fantasy stories don't take place in this area. And that's just fun seeing where you're from represented really well. I got Remarkably Bright Creatures from the library, and this was a book that I have previously DNF'd twice. I think probably because it just wasn't the right book at the right time, but this time I did read it cover to cover, read it very quickly, and I enjoyed it. Um, it's been so hyped for so long that I know a lot of people really love it and found it really profound and life-changing, which is wonderful. I enjoyed it, but I didn't have that strong of an emotional reaction to it. I love octopi. I think they're fantastic creatures. I loved how the main octopus was represented in the book. I didn't find all of the human storylines particularly relatable or even necessarily compelling, but I really enjoyed the book. I am glad I got to read it finally after all this time. And if you haven't read it, go for it. Another book I got from the library in May is a book called Small Things Like These. This book recently made the rounds as, I think, an Oprah's book club pick, and a lot of people were talking about its power and how wonderful it was. I've just seen a lot of hype, and I was excited to get it from the library when I did. The book I found to be extremely underwhelming for the content. I understand the point. I understand why it was written like that. I understand where that quiet power comes from in this novel. However, the subject matter deals with Ireland and the Catholic Church and basically taking in women and using them as forced labor for having a child out of wedlock back in the time where that was way more inappropriate than today. That was a fascinating author's note. So you read the whole book, you get to the end, there's an amazing author's note about this story and this thing that was happening in Ireland, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, not that long ago. And that author's note alone was more interesting than the book for me. So I struggle with this book because I wanted more. I wanted to have connections to the characters. I wanted to understand what was happening, and it was just a side thing. I don't know. I was underwhelmed. It's a really important topic, a really important story, and I just felt let down. Did you read it? Let me know. Drop me a comment. I'm quite curious. I got to read the book Careless People, which you may remember recently made a bit of a kerfuffle in the literary community because Facebook, Meta, wanted to pull the book from shelves for potentially defamatory statements and stories. The book is written by a previous Meta employee and chronicles her 7 years, I believe, with Facebook and kind of the rise of Facebook, working in the kind of operations-y space with legal and governmental regulations and how Facebook can be used for communication and natural disasters and just the power that Facebook could have in those types of scenarios. It was a really interesting story. There's a lot going on here. There is the very blatant Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, untouchable kind of crowd. You make that much money, you have a company like Meta, like Facebook under your belt, you can get away with a lot. And that's really chronicled in a fascinating way. What I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, a couple people have, I haven't seen a ton of people talk about this with Careless People, is I would call it the unreliable narrator perspective. The author, being someone who worked there and chronicling her own time, is inherently biased and in a lot of ways is inherently complicit in some of these things that Facebook got embroiled in. It was really good. It's a very good book. It will hopefully confirm a lot of your suspicions, maybe fears about how social media operates and who's got whose best interests at heart. Check it out. It's worth a read. I would really love your thoughts. Have you read Careless People? Did you get the same things that I got? Did you get something different that I haven't talked about? Let me know in the comments. I'm quite curious. I read the book Validation by Caroline Fleck. This book was fascinating because it's a nonfiction book, because it's probably more of like a self-help book. But I loved Validation because it talks about things that most people don't realize are so critical to communication, which is acknowledging the other person's experience and then being able to really validate their experience, not agree with their behavior, not condone anything that you disagree with, but still validate their experience, their existence, whatever they're going through. Caroline Fleck, the author, is a therapist, so a lot of that background is in there, and I love books like this because it's a clinical look at people's behavior, and I love clinical looks at people's behavior because people behave emotionally. So it's a great way to take a look at things and learn new ways to observe people. Validation goes through a step-by-step process of easy, medium, and hard almost steps for validating people that you're speaking with. And it could be something as simple as nodding and acknowledging that you're actively listening, all the way to really turning questions around on them to make them know, help them know that you really understand by suggesting the next thing, whatever those tools and techniques are. It's a really well written book. It's not too long, very tactical, dives into some really important things. I think it's a book everyone should read for communication, if nothing else. Even if you think you're great at empathy and validation, take a read. It's worth your time to really help understand how to make sure your conversational partner feels seen and heard. Spoiler alert, there is some bonus material about this book in my upcoming course, The Growth Library. So use those links and go check it out. I think one of my favorite books I read in the month of May is a book called Shark Heart. And this book was given to me months ago by my mother-in-law. And she said, "You're either going to love it or hate it, but I think you should read it." And I loved it. I ugly cried. It was beautiful. It was subtle, powerful. Oh, I've read this book in probably 6 hours over the course of 2 days. It was gorgeous. I loved this book, and I really didn't think I would have any strong feelings about this book. And I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Cannot say enough good things about it. I interrupted a conversation at my local bookstore the other day when I heard someone talk about this book, just to add how much I loved this book and how much someone else should read it. That's how powerful and how much I love this book. What is it about? It's a really interesting story with a fantastical element, right? So our main two characters fall in love, everything's great, and then he gets diagnosed with a mutation where he turns into a great white shark. There's your fantasy element. Very cool. But what follows is a love story. And it's a love story about romantic partner love. It's a love story about parent-child love and how childhood trauma is not, our fault, but it's our responsibility. It affects us every day, how we overcome that. It's a subtle metaphor for chronic illness and terminal illnesses. It was such a beautiful story. I cannot believe that more people don't know about this. So please go read this book. It's gorgeous. And let me know what you think. I love this book. I'm going to be talking about it for a while, I can tell. It's so good, and it moved me to tears, which is a very hard thing to do these days. When I visited Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee, I picked up a book, the Jane Austen Insult Guide for Well-Bred Women. This is a cutesy little short book full of quotes from Jane Austen books where you can insult people. And it's just low-key classic British humor where you're making a point, you're slightly insulting, but you're still very polite and posh about things. And I loved it. Of course, you can blow through this in, about an hour just hanging around. And I did. Read it in the middle of the day, just hanging out one day. It's delightful. Definitely a book I would have a physical copy of for reference because you never know when those insults are going to come in handy. And I would partner this book with a book called How to Piss Off Men, which again has a lot of insults for the bros and the chads and just like those types of personalities that we tend to encounter. And just if you're slightly malevolent, you'll love these books. I read The Many Lives of Mama Love, and when I started this book, I straight up and down thought this was a novel. So imagine my surprise when I get to chapter 2 and I realize this book is a memoir. Why I thought it was a novel when it clearly says a memoir, I don't know, but here we are. The Many Lives of Mama Love talks about the author's time, basically as an addict getting arrested, going through the prison process, and rehabilitating her life and coming out the other side. It's a very inspiring, very powerful story. It's right up there with the memoir Educated, which is one of my favorites. This book talks about so many different things about love, about family, about trauma, about wanting to help, just the empathy that you have for these women in this jail and what they're going through. And again, it's the same theme of it's not the individual's fault, but it is their responsibility. The consequences are there because of the choices that were made, and you can understand why choices were made given XYZ reasons. It's really interesting to see this particular experience, especially of a what you would call a stereotypical West Coast housewife going through the jail process and just the subtle, the overt racism, the subtle and the overt misogyny that people have to deal with, or that women have to deal with. It's a fascinating story. I would highly recommend this one. Still feeling nonfiction-y, I read Animal Vegetable Miracle by Barbara Kingsolver. I've literally owned this book since 2012 when I was attempting to be vegan and more sustainable and go through my very crunchy granola eco phase, which I admire anyone who can still do that. It's not for me. Animal Vegetable Miracle was a great little book, kind of like a memoir, kind of like a collection of essays, and of course, written by Pulitzer Prize winning Barbara Kingsolver. It also incorporated essays from her husband and her oldest daughter. What I loved was how the family was brought together, not only to chronicle their year of moving from Tucson to rural Appalachia to farm their homestead and really live off the land, but how difficult that can be and how the small farm struggle is very much real. And even though this book was written in 2007, the principles still apply, and the experience has probably just gotten worse for farmers. It reminds me a lot of what Jeremy Clarkson does on his show Clarkson's Farm. Shameless plug, that's one of my favorite shows. But he uses his time and money and to be a gentleman farmer, but also really helps to illustrate how difficult it is for people who don't have that millions and millions of dollars of buffer to lose money on the farm. These are real lives and real people at stake. It's a great book, pretty short to get through. And the best part is it has recipes, not a cookbook, but there are recipes peppered throughout. So I would highly recommend it because they look really good. A book I attempted to read is called The Husbands. This book had a really interesting premise where woman comes home from a bachelorette night and she has a man in her apartment, but he's super chill and he's cute and he's very loving and sweet and he's her husband. She doesn't believe she's ever been married before. Man goes up into the attic, new man comes down. And this pattern repeats. She goes through quite a few of them. Really cool premise, right? I will try reading this book again in the future because I really think the concept is interesting. Couldn't get into it for whatever reason. I did the 100 pages minus my age. I stopped and I couldn't find a reason to keep going. There are other books that I wanted to spend my time reading, which is great. Maybe I'll try this book again in the future. Ultimately, it just didn't grab my attention for long enough. Nothing really happened in the first 100 or so pages, so I let it go. It is what it is, but I had to DNF this one. But did you read it? I would love to know. So drop me a note if you've read it and you liked it, you didn't like it, tell me your thoughts. As is wont to happen, I got about 7 holds from the library within 5 days. So the first one I got is a book called This Tender Land. I'd never heard of it. Someone in passing mentioned it to me that they read it. I might like it. I got about halfway through this book before I ended up DNFing it. Beautiful, beautiful prose. Absolutely gorgeously written. No denying that. I couldn't empathize. I couldn't relate with any of the characters or the storyline. I think I couldn't visualize it well. It was supposed to take place, I think, in 1932, just after the Great Depression. The main character is 12 at the time, speaks like an adult, so that threw me off. I kept picturing something more along the lines of like the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, so my timing was also thrown off. I don't know if I'm the right reader for this book, and that is okay. It was, again, gorgeously written, objectively beautiful prose. I cannot say that enough. I couldn't get into it and I couldn't justify finishing the book. After about 200 pages, I was done. I had a bunch of holds at the library. There are other books I wanted to read. So try again, maybe, maybe not. A hold that came in from the library is Seth Rogen's book, Yearbook. I didn't know Seth Rogen had a book. I'm a fan of his. He's written and produced and had a hand in quite a few iconic movies that were very formative in my late teenage years that were amazing. I think he's a relatively funny guy. And what I really liked about Yearbook is it shows how wicked smart Seth Rogen is. While he might play dopey, always high, doing shrooms, schlubs in his movies and shows, he's very, very smart, very observant, and has a incredibly good grasp on current events and what's happening in the world around him. Don't let the weed and the shrooms fool you. This guy's very, very smart, and it shows. I enjoyed his book. It's a very quick read, a lot of really funny anecdotes, a lot of very cringy and awkward anecdotes. They're intentionally that way. They're meant to make you feel awkward. But I think my favorite story was how he met his wife. Beautiful. I love a love story. And it was just a cute book. If you like comedy, if you like memoirs, this would be a great intersection of those two worlds. I finished May with yet another book from the library called The Inheritance Games. I've heard of this series for a long time. I tried to read it and only got through the first chapter before life distracted me, whatever happened. But I really like this book. I think I read about 25% of it in the first night that I had it. So really enjoyed the Inheritance Games. I'm looking forward to finishing the series. That should be really fun. It's a fun, different take on kind of a YA fantasy series. Yeah, it was just really fun and different, and I really liked it. And just enough reality where you feel like maybe this could happen, which is perfect. So hit a lot of the sweet spots. I really enjoyed it. Can't wait to read the next ones, and we'll see where the series goes. What did you read in the month of May? I would love to know. So please drop me a comment and share some of your favorite books that you read this month. What did you think about some of the books I mentioned that I read? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I completely off my rocker? Let me know your thoughts. I'm always curious to hear. And as always, if you liked this video or got something from it or interested in a book I mentioned, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and please use the link in the description or the pinned comment below to sign up for the upcoming Growth Library course coming out later in 2025. I hope you have a phenomenal day.